Before downloading the recorded data, check the current folder and make sure the file will be transferred into the right folder. Make sure the recorder is off and remove the ECG cable. Connect the USB cable. Basically, the operation is to transfer the recorded ECG signals from the EFT along with the time, the date, and the environment values, ECG cable impedance, battery voltage, temperature, spatial position, and event marker. The patient's file will be recorded onto the PC hard drive. The file is completely based on the patient's identification and the analysis parameters. Click on the download icon. The program will transfer the header and then display patient's identification dialog box. Enter last name, first name, etc. Or if the patient has already been studied previously, go to Find Patient References by entering first few letters of the patient last name and then select the patient. Then click on Set References. Enter the information and select the required analysis parameters. The presence of a pacemaker, optimization by choosing pediatrics or long QT. For rhythm analysis, you may adjust some parameters in advance or select a protocol that may be previously recorded. Finally, click OK and wait a few seconds for the standard recording, and then a confirming message will appear at the end of the transfer. Quick Reader allows you to check the analysis parameters. You see the original settings that you can adjust or complete. Watch specially the connectivity percentage of each track to avoid selecting a track with low connectivity, which will only add errors to the result. The default sensitivities are adapted to most of the records. You can request an analysis that combines the basic QRS detection, their classification, and analysis of rhythm, or complete it by an automatic selection of ECG samples, or a selection of QRS templates in a report. We recommend choosing the basic analysis. Then command Start Automatic Analysis. The program reads the ECG signal to recognize the different waves and their association. A file containing QRS characteristic will be created. The data is then processed to perform a classification of QRS, normal, ventricular, aberrant conduction or fusion beat, or pace beat. We will obtain a file of labeled QRS. The rhythm analysis program uses the file and rhythm parameters to identify rhythm disorders that are ultimately stored in the file. Quick Reader shows the result in the form of heart rates and events. The heart rate trend with icon allows you to scan the results for verification before printing the report. For example, click on these icons to observe the ECG. A good QRS detection and its classification are verified. The supraventricular QRS are displayed in green and the ventricular QRS in red. Search for over-detection, under-detections. In case of an error, you can correct it locally. If it recurs, it is advisable to observe the classification graphic to correct this error in a very timely manner. The blue band on the heart rate trend corresponds to the time range of the 10 samples that follows the cursor. They are listed on the right. The end of this band is located at the time of the last sample shown. To analyze the classification of QRS, click on the classification icon. The graphic is displayed as scattered clouds with the supraventricular QRS in green and with the ventricular QRS in red. By default, the program shows the characteristic of QRS on track A. It is often useful to study the track B and, if applicable, on the track C. We find that the record has very few artifacts. We add scattered points throughout the graphic, which can be easily recognized and eliminated. The quality of the placement of the electrode has an impact on every clear signal. and it can avoid losing a significant amount of time to do the artifacts elimination. Select ventricular. It leaves only the red dots remaining in the graphic. Dragging in different areas of the graphic, it brings up the corresponding QRS in 3D. Check immediately if all the red dots are actual ventricular QRS. In the case of this patient here, the patient has several ventricular areas corresponding to different ectopic foci. The selected area are displayed as the lighter zones. Therefore, you won't forget to check any area. It is possible to erase the lighter zone by clicking on the Reset button on the left. Examination of the central area, corresponding to load width and height, shows an overdetection of the T wave. All of this signal can be eliminated by clicking on the button Column All and Line Artifact or Overdetection. Now select the supraventricular QRS. It remains only green dots. Drag a few green areas. You will be able to check the consistency of the QRS. The upper peak corresponds to higher range QRS, and the bottom peak corresponds to the QRS with less height. There are a series of green dots scattered beneath the cloud. The 3D screen shows that it is mostly ventricular QRS. They are all reclassified as V, and one QRS is corrected as supraventricular, and two other QRS are corrected as artifacts. Same problem with the higher areas close to the cloud. Few QRS are classified either as ventricular or as artifact. In the biphasic QRS graphic, you are able to explore quickly the different scattered clouds and also find areas containing ventricular QRS that we reclassified immediately. Their presence is quite rare in the biphasic QRS. It is due to the high frequency content as seen in the track A on the left side of the CD ECG. Observe the supraventricular QRS cloud. The report includes a QRS templates page, which is easily to be complete from this graphic. Select a good quality supraventricular QRS. Click the right mouse button. Then we may select a QRS for the templates page. The QRS is displayed in the first 5 empty boxes available for each QRS category. We do the same with small supraventricular QRS. And then the same with major ventricular QRS templates. After the classification is revised, we return to the trends. Let's evaluate rhythm disorder by clicking on the icons or by using the list. Supraventricular runs. Ventricular couplets. bradycardia. In order to print the ECG samples, click the right button on the samples list and comment Select to print. The default comments with low priority is unadvised. Of course, you can modify the comment and the priority. The background of the printed samples changes from pink to green to facilitate their identification. When to examine an event that recurs frequently or to search for the most critical events, we may use the sample selection tool. It displays the numbers of events and occurrence of successive ventricular premature beats. Here we have 972 ventricular premature beats and a maximum of 2 occurrences, corresponding to the couplets. To see all couplets, we click None, which clears all the boxes. Then we check VPB, and we set the search occurrence to 2. Click on Recalculate. We can see that there are a total of 15 ventricular couplets. Let's drop the 2 for now. The icons always appear in gray, except for the couplets. The samples only show ventricular couplets. We can then quickly choose a few couplets to print. The histogram can be used for several searches. To search longest and shortest RR, select NN. Drag to the end of the histogram to look for the longest RR. Here is selected for printing. Drag the beginning of the histogram to look for the shortest RR. Select and print. Quick Reader allows a measure of segment ST elevation. This can be very useful to diagnosing patients at risk and to see if there's a link between certain rhythm disorders and eventually detect a crisis. The measure does not take place until classification is validated. It is to avoid computing of wrong classified QRS. To control the position of the sample points, keep the right arrow button pressed. We choose the moments of low heart rate, the end of the night, and moments of high heart rate. The red bar on the left, which corresponds to the reference, should be placed on the time of 0 voltage, by default between P wave and Q wave. The bar on the right is to sample the range of ST. The difference between this range and the isoelectric reference provides the value of ST evaluation on each track. If the position of the bars is not good, it must be adjusted. Locate the desired time gap and return to the patient identification dialog box. The position of sampling is reduced by 10 milliseconds to approach the QRS. The new setting is checked. Then in the menu, we start the command Analyze ST Evaluation. The program will display 2 trends of ST evaluation, red and green, respectively corresponding to those 2 tracks, and indicates the presence of crisis at the bottom. The corresponding samples are shown in the list of samples. Then select those that you wish to print. In order to have a complete report, verify the page of QRS templates before printing the report, especially the sample selection. Select heart rate and print samples to show the selection. You may deselect or add a few samples if necessary. Click on the printer icon to print the report or select Files, Print Preview in the menu before printing. To add comments by using the pre-recorded messages, click on Load an Example. Or messages created previously, click on Save as Example. With the overall analysis result shown above, you can also use Auto Comment to complete a basic comment from the value given by the analysis. Select the pages that you wish to print. General report with or without result of the ST analysis. If the recording lasts several days, you can choose the most significant day on reference period. The trend of heart rate of this reference period will be displayed in the main page, and it will be used for the histogram page. On this page, each arrhythmia is associated to a graphic reflecting the distribution of the events, which makes the report more explicit. The patient's diary lists the points that you have entered. The summary tables give the value of heart rates and the pathology counters for each hour. For long-term recordings, you can select 24-hour circle. The trends shows 24-hour heart rate, along with icons and lines linked to the rhythm disorders. If the ST analysis is required, the trends of ST segment elevation are also printed. For long-term recordings, you may select a starting date and the numbers of days to print. QRS templates and histogram page 24 hours day and night, regard to the reference period. The ECG samples are printed according to priority and chronological order. The appearance may be improved by changing the signal position. Here, due to huge asymmetry in two tracks, a percentage of 20% and 70% provide a better result. Finally, you may print a miniature ECG displaying 1 hour per page. Be careful with the number of pages for long-term periods. We recommend you use a mouse with a scroll wheel to work comfortably. It helps to move much faster in 3D ECG, and you will not have to move the cursor on the left side or use the up and down arrows button on the keyboard. Reclassification panel presents several features that you should know. Reclassification buttons include 3 columns and 6 rows. To reclassify pointed QRS, select the QRS column. To assign all the visible QRS in the page, maximum 30, select the page column. To reclassify all QRS dragged by the mouse, select all column. The lines correspond to the different categories of QRS. N for supraventricular beat, V for ventricular beat, C for aberrant conduction, PM for pace beat, OV-det for over-detection. The additional detected QRS completely disappears, and the RR period is recalculated. ART for artifacts. The button located at the intersection of the column and the line immediately reclasses the selected QRS. The selected QRS counter appears at the top. If the number exceeds the maximum numbers of the QRS displayed in the page, which is 30, you will be able to explore all the QRS by displaying several consecutive pages. When using this method, we advise you to limit the number of selected QRS to the values of a few dozen by defining the size of the dragged areas. To reclassify in a much easier way and to manage larger numbers of QRS, use autocorrelation sigma. When this option is selected, click Refresh to update the graphic. Each line compiles all the QRS with a similar template, which can be accessed with the right arrow button on the keyboard. To use this context, the display QRS are copied in the first sample of the list. The number of QRS in each line is shown in the left. The different figures are in staggered rows for being legible. This method has 2 major advantages. You can reclassify thousands of similar QRS by clicking the QRS column button. You may detect abnormal shapes that are hidden in the batch, Without autocorrelation, you may have to reboot and check large numbers of pages. On the other hand, in this mode, the program behavior is significantly different. Therefore, it is advisable to use it only in special cases. The resemblance of the QRS is studied on the selected tracks. Automatically, the existing paths are selected, but it may be useful to discard an artifacted track, preventing the QRS to relate and makes this mode unusable. You may adjust the sensitivity of the autocorrelation in the Display Configuration dialog box. If you choose a low sensitivity, the program will accept greater differences between the QRS. There may be the risk of seeing different shapes correlated together. When you select or deselect the sigma, click on Refresh and update the graphic. Create a patient's diary. To create an online patient diary, click on the trend on the timeline, then click on Print in the ECG. Enter a comment and select Not Printed. Patient's Activity List. In some difficult cases, you may need to discard the printing of a value in the report. Then correct the figure in the printing dialog box. This correction is shown on the report with the designation as modified, but it is not permanent. It will be deleted as soon as you recalculate the reading. If you hesitate to use certain functions, there are help menus available. How to do in the dialog box, and read the electronic menu. You can transfer all the patient's information through Internet from the patient's list. This feature creates a single compressed file without losing the quality, and it might be retrieved in the subdirectory as QR Internet. You can send this file to your correspondent as an attached file or through a server that supports big files. Find instruction in How to Do section or in the menu. You may also record the file in a DVD or in a USB key. The reading of an Internet file is simply to retrieve the file from a subdirectory and decompress it in a current directory with the command Import Internet File. Recording at 1000 Hz gives a very accurate signal, but it consumes 4 times more space than the one that at 250 Hz and reduces the automacy of the recording or the hard disk availability. It is strongly recommended for recording patients with a pacemaker or for specific tests. When the heart rate trend is very sparse, it is often due to high impedance periods, which causes QRS labelized artifact. In some cases, the sensitivity to disconnection must be reduced in order to retrieve the QRS.